We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Leslie Mitchell-Clark
and Wes Roberts,
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts. Not alone. And a very, very hearty welcome to all of our devoted listeners, viewers, and fans out there in cyberspace. I'm Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and as always, I'm joined by...
I'm Wes Roberts. Hello.
That's right. And this is actually the first episode of our second season of Contact TV. And many of you have been following us since we were Contact Radio for many years. And now we have the visual component. And of course, when we have a stunning guest like today, the visual component is really important.
Oh, it counts. It's so much better.
Yes, indeed. So we're so thrilled to be welcoming to our show for the first time, and I hope for many more times in the future, Miss Lynn Andrews, who is a best-selling author of multiple books, and she is also the recent author of a divination deck, and we're going to be talking not only about her current one, which is beautifully illustrated with Native American themed drawings, but also her previous deck called the Power Deck. We're going to find out all about that. So without further ado, we welcome to Contact TV, Miss Lynn Roberts, all the way from, is it Arizona, Lynn?
Lynn Andrews.
Andrews, is it, are you in Arizona?
I am in Arizona. I live part-time here and part-time in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Wow, wonderful. So, Lynn, would you like to tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you came to be interested in these spiritual, metaphysical modalities? Were you psychic as a child? Is it something that runs in your family?
I was psychic in a sense, if that's what you'd call it. I could see lights around people. When I think the first time I ever really named what I was seeing was I was about 6 years old. And I realized very early on that people do not like you to really see them. So when I would say to my best friend, who was a Native American girl, we would ride our horses to school every morning together. And one morning she arrived and there was this red, vibrant color around her. And I knew that most likely her alcoholic father had beaten her that night. You know, and I wanted to reach out to her, and I don't know what I said as a 6-year-old, but I said I wanted to help you, and I know that you've been through a lot, something like that. And she was horrified that I could see that. And in fact, we almost lost our friendship over it. So
gosh.
I could see lights around her, but I could also see into their bodies. You know, I could see the pain, the dis-ease, if you will. Of course, I thought everybody saw that.
Yeah.
So when I mentioned it and talked about it to a couple of people, they thought, number one, I was nuts, and they just... people would walk away, and I realized that I couldn't talk about this. And maybe they blamed it on the fact that I was in a Catholic girls' school. I don't know. But I certainly, excuse me, I would go into the chapel and pray in my own way. I was not a Catholic, but I had been baptized Presbyterian. And I wanted to study religion. You know, I wanted to know what all of this God stuff was about early on. And I kept seeing lights around people. I kept being able to see if there was dis-ease. And I just stopped talking about it. And one of the reasons I wrote my books, Medicine Woman, in the beginning, was because I saw that people live so often not following their dreams. You know, they don't live the way they would love to live. They
Oh, yeah.
live, you know, the way society or their family want them to be. And that's a desperate danger in terms of certainly the process of enlightenment, as you know.
Indeed, indeed. We are our own worst enemies, aren't we? We set up our own blockages and our own fears that prevent us from manifesting our greatest purpose, our greatest joy.
Yes, yes, we do. And we're doing it now. You know, if there is a war in the world, there is a war inside of you. Because, isn't it true? We're all responsible for the reality that we see in the world. So there's a great responsibility. I mean, look at the chaos that's going on in this country right now.
Yes.
And that, of course, produces other chaos in other places.
Indeed.
We're chaos containers, I guess. We carry it around with us.
Well, we do. And, you know, Leslie, your eyes are so incredible.
Oh, thank you. I like you. I when I was a small child in Mass, I used to see auras around people's heads and bodies, and of course, I thought from the pictures of saints and various Catholic iconography that everybody saw that. And, you know, my grandmother told me, well, you know, probably not a good idea to share this with everyone. But you know, we have a lot in common in that respect.
Tell us, Lynn, were people afraid? Because I run into this. Were people afraid when you saw things in them?
Oh, of course, because it implies a couple of different things. It implies, number one, that you can see them, and they are in the process, most likely, of hiding certain things. And then it also implies in their subconscious that change needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
Somehow a change gets in there. And human beings say, oh, change is wonderful and we need to do this and that. Change is one of the things people are most afraid of.
No kidding.
And enlightenment being number one.
Yeah.
So frightening thing because it implies change in your life.
Indeed, you know, and I think, Lynn, that if people weren't so terribly afraid of change, positive change, I wouldn't have a career. This is the core issue of everyone that really I work with. They have the power of transformation, but they're terrified to use it because they have become comfortable with their misery.
Well, they become familiar with it.
Yes.
Yeah, and they think they're comfortable.
Yes.
You know, I work, and this is what you're saying. I understand what you're saying completely. When I've written 21 books, and so I've been on book tour many times in my life. And each place I would go to, I would also work with people. And I found there's no place I've ever been that doesn't have an incredible number of people coming out of abuse.
Yeah.
I would say almost 90%
It's huge.
of the world
It's huge.
has come out of abuse. So what happens? You come out of abuse and you carry that with you. That's one thing. But it also makes you a puer, or which is in Latin the eternal child. And the eternal child has certain reactions. They don't think anything really bad will ever happen to them. They stay very young and pretty and handsome in their lives. And they get into lots of trouble because it's very hard for them to commit to anything. And so often, if they have committed later on in life, they will destroy themselves or certainly try to tear down what they have actually built. They'll sabotage themselves.
Indeed.
because of that abuse. And if people don't realize that's what they're heading for. So I decided, after all these years of wandering around the world, that I would start a shamanic school or a mystery school. And I did. And I thought, oh, well, we can do this in a year. This will be great. In a school without walls. And I did the first year. And of course, it was all about energy. You couldn't pass the energy coming from the waterfall, you know. And so I thought, well, I can't let these kids go out there with just this. So then they had to learn to contain that energy. How do you contain it? How do you form it? And of course, then thought and all of these other things come into the teaching, and how you make something of power. How do you make a drum or a rattle or a medicine bag? You know, how do you make things that you can actually empower so that you can perhaps heal somebody else? And so that was. And then the third year was going deeply into emotions, into, you know, under the surface of the water, so to speak. And then the last year was manifestation into the world. All of this that you actually cleared away. You know, we have so much that we carry that no longer serves us. And to let go of it, because like you said, it's become like a friend. You know, whether it's thoughts of abuse or opinions or judgments, all these things put a fence around your consciousness.
Indeed.
You know, so my books have been about all this. Medicine Woman is how a woman in Beverly Hills, in the film business, in the art world, how in the world did she find herself to the north of Manitoba and working with Native American women of power? Not in a traditional sense, I want to add. This is a very specialized gathering of women who are called the Sisterhood of the Shields. And I know this of faith, but the Sisterhood of the Shields come from different parts of the world. So the teachings are not traditional in any sense from anywhere. It's about the ancient feminine. Certainly the knowledge has been set here by people from the Pleiades. It's a Pleiadian.
Yes.
Pleiadian,
Pleiadian.
And so forth and so on. And, you know, you guys touch a lot on, I think, extraterrestrials and other
We do.
levels. Yeah, which is fascinating to me as well. You know, I gave my first, I think, 20 Joshua trees, my event of the year out at Joshua Tree. And, you know, we were always visited by something, you know, flying by in the night.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. And in the end of my book, Flight of the Seventh Moon, which my publisher changed to Spirit Woman, that was my second book. And in the end, at the end of it, I talk about the flying shields.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd enjoy that so much.
I will order it today. Absolutely. So, Lynn, tell me a little bit about, we are fascinated to hear about not only your current divination deck that you have just co-created with a marvelous artist who used Native American iconography and visualizations and such, but also tell us a little about your previous deck, which I believe was called the Power Deck, and how do these two decks differ?
Oh, the Power Deck was, I'm just looking for it here.
Sure.
The Power Deck is a deck of cards that the painter was from Holland, and I would pick the paintings, and then I would write the teachings kind of to the painting, so it illustrated
Okay.
what I was trying to say. And this book is a more peaceful, it's beautiful. The cards are just, this is the feminine card on the front. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
With roots down into the earth.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And so his paintings are surreal. And all nature mostly, and all kinds of images. They're just exquisitely beautiful. And so I have this deck, and it's been out a long time. And it basically, oh gosh, I don't have the cards, but I do have, well, I can't show you that.
That's
No picture.
okay. That's all right. Everyone can always log onto your website,
Yes.
and which is very, very easy to find. It's just lynnandrews.com.
Yeah.
And we're going to put that up so people can take a look at the various decks and your books and the products that you have.
Well, you'll see that this painting is very serene.
Yes.
It's very light, and it is the feminine card. Then on my new deck, this is one of the paintings. Let me see if I can get that in there.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
that's good.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's perfect. We can see it very well.
Incredible.
With a lot of monarchs,
And-
are they? Yes.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, so you can see it's very tough. It's not just a pretty painting. You see
No,
what
it
I
has
mean?
an edge to it. Yeah.
You know, he's opening his chest, and the butterflies are flying out. And the card is about release. And so I decided that we all need a bit of a quickening, human beings. We need a quickening at this time. We need to say, hey, wait a minute. You know, so many people are running around parroting what they've heard from somebody else and never really looking into where these statements truly come from and what our history is. Try and destroy our history because only is it works of art, but also it shows you, okay, we almost took this path and it would not have been a good one. And this marks that. So I just don't understand all that kind of stuff, and I don't want to get into that. But I think history is very important.
Indeed, and we have global amnesia, I would have to say. Not only do we not recall our previous mega cultures that defined us, we don't even recall events from World War II. We have an amnesia that goes on, I think.
But we're not teaching it.
Yeah.
We're not teaching history in schools. We're not educating people. And most people are not interested in educating themselves. They don't see the importance of history. Look at the Bolshevik Revolution, please. Look at what happened in Europe. Look at what's happening to us.
Yeah.
And many of these things, history repeats itself.
Yeah. Sure. Until we get it right.
Or not.
Yeah.
Lynn,
Or not.
Lynn, could I ask you to go back to something, because this is fascinating to me? The way you use quickening, is that from the Egyptological word? Because that's how I understand the word quickening.
Tell me how you understand it. What does that mean to you?
The way I understand quickening, and again, it's from an Egyptological standpoint, is basically, to use a metaphor, dipping one's finger into a liquid, and the liquid travels through your entire system, not just your body, and you're capable of enlightenment that you weren't capable of before. That's how I understand it.
Now that's Egyptology.
Yeah.
And I missed, we cut off there for a second. You said in the beginning that something was...
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like I used a metaphor of putting one's finger into a crucible, so to speak, and then this travels up and through you and changes you from the inside.
Right. I see. Well, yes, that's certainly why I did these decks, is because we don't take time to pray. We don't take time in our day, like before we go out in the morning, we're just flying around.
Yeah.
If you take one moment and draw a card, and just look at the beauty of it, and then read what's on the back. And this particular card is called Observe, and it has the hummingbird. Can you see? Well, there.
Oh, I
Okay.
see it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So it's like a kind of like a medicine bundle,
Mm-hmm.
but yet the hummingbird is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And this card is about observe. Hey, wait a minute, observe your day.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you in a sacred witness? Are you,
Hmm.
what are you doing through this day? And how, of course, this is an oracle deck.
Mm-hmm.
So, an oracle, typically we think of oracles in ancient times,
Mm-hmm.
and a high priest or priestess, reading to us. Excuse me. And in other words, someone outside of ourselves giving us information. To me, teaching of this time and of this soil, our blessed country, the earth, Mother Earth herself, is teaching us to go inside, to find the truths, the wisdom that we have always carried.
Mm-hmm.
And we these things, as you both know this, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you access it?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
real easy to say. And this is a way of doing that. These cards are deep
Mm-hmm.
and much more very thought provoking.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask you questions that are not easy,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and you have to think about it. And
Yeah.
hopefully it will help, people to get into that place inside that they don't normally visit, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, people are very visual
Mm-hmm.
in general. People are extremely visual. So to have
Uh-huh.
a tool, an access tool, if you will, that is visually stunning, that opens people up really on a subconscious level,
Right.
it's a marvelous idea. Lynn, I'm very curious now in the makeup of both of the new deck and of course the power deck as well. Have you used any elements of tarot or the Book of Thoth? Is there a greater arcana? Are there face figures, personalities, and then the lower arcana, or was this just really an inspired, I should say, motif after another?
This is inspired, but of course I work with the Sisterhood of the Shields,
Mm-hmm.
which is, there are 44 of us, and the wisdom comes from the Pleiades, ancient,
Mm-hmm.
sacred feminine in origin, but applying to everyone because
Mm-hmm.
there's a sacred feminine West in you and a sacred male in you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it applies to balance, and it applies to going around the sacred wheel and finding balance in your physical self in the South, in your sacred dream and transformation in the West, in your spirit with inspiration in the North, and mind, and what is rationally possible, and is what I'm thinking about really, does it make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the East.
Mm-hmm.
So go around the wheel with this as well. So it
Right.
does give you a way of organizing your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yeah, well, or both of you, can I ask you a question? You said
Sure.
that you've had visitations
Yes.
and been taken away, right? Have you ever been able to talk with any of them? I mean, Is that for another conversation?
I will quickly answer it because we're more interested in you today, but I can quickly answer that for you. I'd love to. The quick answer is yes in two different ways. One way is that I seem to be, let's say, out of body in a lot of these experiences, and I am just a duplicate of me, so I can have conversations with them. They never speak with their mouths. The other way is, and this you might find this really fascinating, Leslie and I, through our sessions, and I've done 35 sessions with her, got to the point where we were communicating in real time with one particular entity, as far as we know.
Oh my.
So the communications are by and large telepathic communications. However, in the range of what experiencers go through, when people are, and I don't like to use the word abducted, because I think there has been a consent, either in the interlife, or I think it's part of the plan. I don't like to put that negativity on it, because by and large, most people have benign, illuminating experiences. The dark experiences, which I'm not even going to really elucidate on, anytime those occur, it seems to be in collaboration with humanoids.
Yeah.
So there are collaborations between certain groups of ETs and certain military dark budgeted organizations, and those are where the worst things happen. In other words, we treat ourselves so horribly. No other species treats us the way we treat ourselves, is what it comes down to. But children, when they're having these early experiences, and I do believe people, for their various abilities, may be targeted, although that's kind of a negative word, but when children are having experiences, there seems to be more physicalized communication that they can understand more easily. And the experiences are very physical, where they go for a ride and they see the stars and all that kind of thing. It seems that as people progress on their path, such as Wes at the age and the evolution that he's at now, his experiences are far more telepathic. You could even compare it to remote viewing, or even bilocation, if you'd like to look at it that way. I think maybe he separates his etheric body, and the etheric body goes off and has these various experiences, while the physical body is in a state of deep sleep and just sort of on automatic pilot.
Yeah. Wow, isn't that interesting?
I think
considering shamanic work, where you are so much out of you're in second attention and maybe third attention. Everybody has these things described as in a different way, and really, I think they're very similar.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, I think so, Wes. I think you're going out of your dream state, but you're moving with your dream body into different levels, dominions of consciousness. Yeah. Have you ever remembered any of those domains when you're flying?
So I remember almost everything in hypnosis or outside of hypnosis. So I went to Leslie because I had recalled a handful of experiences without hypnosis. So a lot of people get that wrong. They think, well, the hypnotherapist coaxes this out of you. It's not true at all. I had a key experience that I went to Leslie for, and that evolved over 35 sessions, where now I've had 40 different experiences at least.
I think most people who come to us, and most experiencers, as Wes just said, have a combination of conscious and suppressed memories. But my basic feeling is that the only reason for suppressed memories is people are allowed to process things as they're ready, as they become ready. I think it's benevolent. I don't think it's secretive. I think it's merely about what we can accept at our state of enlightenment.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of my work went back to the Atlantean experience
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
because one of the women that is in this circle, a woman named Twin Dreamers, and she brought, I mean, this is a super stretch of faith, but she talks about bringing back to us the orchid
Mm-hmm.
and how sacred the orchid was. And if you really look at an orchid, it's really a different kind of plant.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
You know, it has a different voice, there's a different feeling, and it's exquisitely, well, like all flowers. I mean, they're unbelievably amazing, and
Yeah.
herbs and everything else that we produce. Can I mention one thing?
Please.
That when I was doing these cards, and I think that everybody should have these cards. I really am serious. Whether, no matter what your faith is or what you do in your life, because we are of this time and of this soil. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we come from. This is what we walk on every day. And we need to understand that because it's why you were put here.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Right.
see, you know, you were put here to learn a set of things that you knew you needed to learn. You chose it.
Mm-hmm.
I chose. We all chose this
Yep.
in some way. So I think going deeply inside of yourself is what Mother Earth is asking us to do
Mm-hmm.
at this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so much chaos out there, but go inside yourself and let's see what your chaos is, because certainly it's in there if
Mm-hmm.
it's in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
I think these are so important in that regard in terms of learning. And one of the things I learned as I was doing these cards is that every physical substance, whether it's an idea that creates form or your hand, everything is made out of the same substance, meaning that there is no difference between lead and gold
Mm.
except for the quantity and the arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. The alchemist only used those to
So,
transform herself.
well, not only that, but to hide what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
you know, the Crusades came through, they wouldn't be murdered.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they very carefully couched everything in scientific symbols and all the rest of it,
Mm-hmm.
all coming from God, which in fact probably did. You know, it was interesting. I was watching Einstein the other night. It was that whole long series that they
Mm-hmm.
did about his life. That was great, if you haven't seen it. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, he finally said at the end of his life, he said, there is no way that the wonderment of this universe could just fall together. He
Yeah.
said, there is a creator,
Yeah.
something that put this together because it is so perfect and so, so beautiful. And I
Yes.
thought, yeah, shamans have known that for centuries.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yes.
You
Indeed.
know, ancient history, ancient abilities to divine with the creator, with great spirit, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. Lynn, what I'm curious as to how you feel about this. What do you think about the use of ayahuasca or peyote or other, I guess you would call them hallucinogens in the quest for enlightenment? I personally, I'm really on the fence about that, having come from the '60s, and certainly we took plenty of those things, and it never resulted in much illumination, as far as I can remember. But is this something that maybe us and our beings in the Western world, we're not really ready to handle it? And even if the shamans themselves can use it as a tool, should everybody be using it?
Well, again, we're of this time and of this soil. You're taking ayahuasca, most likely in the jungles of Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, somewhere in a whole other context. And, or, they have the Native American church in this country and they take peyote. That is something for them. I don't use drugs. And I prescribe, say, gee, that would be a wonderful thing for you. That would be a real easy event for me to give. I'm going to give you ayahuasca, and you're going to throw up for a while, and then you're going to go off and you're going to go on your trip. And I'm going to go to San Francisco for a couple days, and I'll see you when you get back. Which some teachers do.
Okay.
I'm trying to make a good show. But you know what I mean. It's like there's not a whole lot of teaching that the teacher does.
Exactly.
They just take care of you because God needs it. I have, I don't know. Timothy Leary was a great friend, and he lived near me, and he did wonderful things. I just don't take drugs, and I don't drink. Not because I think it's wrong or bad or anything. It just makes me feel terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel good. And I love our reality. I love it here. Yes, it's painful as all get out. And there are so many flaws. I know that. We all know that. But instead of talking about all the flaws, I want to talk about the person that is seeing those situations in life. And so that they can see with a clear lens. So that if they have been abused, you can name it and forget about it. Get rid of it as best you can. I mean, your body always remembers certain things, But I think truly that we need the education. And everybody seems to forget about education these days. They want to do a political this and that. What about your education? The real education. Don't change the history. Just tell me what happened. I don't want your opinion. I just want what happened. And if you can give me one thing I can go to today, a newspaper, a program where they give you real news from around the world. Do you know of anything?
Indeed.
I'm serious.
Yeah. No.
Education is the key issue. It's only ignorant people without education that are racist, that are fearful of change, fearful of the other. It's all about education. Speaking of which, we used to have a show here in Canada, and I should say I'm an American myself. I'm from New York City and lived in LA for years and years, but we had a show up here called Talking to Americans, and it was one of our major comedians who would stop somebody on the street and just say, would say like, what is the capital of Canada? And the person would say something like Chicago, So I'm afraid the demographic that exposed the ignorance of Americans in general was pretty terrifying, I thought. What's happened? When did it start to become wrong to educate our children in America, in the United States?
Well, maybe it was because they wanted people they could control. People they're easy to control.
Yeah, they are, like sheep, for sure. So Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about your most recent book that has just come out? And I want to make sure I get the title here correctly, because the title is very intriguing. It's called Coming Full Circle, Advanced Teachings for a Modern World. And what kind of things are covered there?
Well, all of my books are autobiographical. They're about my life as I went through all of these teachings and how I reacted to it. So, you know, all of these books are about my life with different women of power. I was in Australia with Ginny V, and she was a woman of high degree. She is a woman of high degree. She's Aborigine. And we spent a great deal of time in a women's camp, which is almost unheard of. You know, this was way in the outback, and these women were completely separate from the modern world and things like that. So I write about my experiences with them and this magnificent circle of women who I am initiated into, the Sisterhood of the Shields, is about wisdom, ancient wisdom, knowledge. How do you learn about yourself? So you learn through experience. So in my school, I teach you through experience. I can't just write down and do these books. I take you, you know, on a journey with me in my books, like coming full circle. You know, I bring you all the way along. And you come with me, and I think most people say to me, gosh, I just feel like I know you, because when you were going through La Caldera, that was me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Experience it. And then I have my events, which you see on my website. You know, I have all this stuff I do all the time. And that gives people an experience. I would never give an event and just stand on the stage and blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't do that. I have you come to an event. I do, and then I want you to experience the teaching by making a drum in a sacred way, the way you stitch it with a prayer, with every stitch and thing. But you have meditations and guided journeys that I do with you, so that when you come away from those journeys, you have symbolism and color and sound, and you take that and you put it into your works of art, so that when you leave an event, you have something beautiful to bring
that's
home.
Lovely.
Oh, beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
lovely. Is that the same with your writing spirit school as well? You do something similar?
Yes. Yes, Writing Spirit School. I don't know if you've looked at that book. I'm so proud of it. It's a good book, and if I may say so myself. And then I did a workbook for teaching people about writing. Now, my experience was all the great writers that I went to, the publishers I went to in the beginning, all kind of looked at me like I was from another planet, thank you, and writing things that people didn't want to hear about a woman's emotions. You know, we don't want to hear about your sacred journey. It's very boring. So I went home and I looked at that, and I thought about grammar, plot, and syntax and all this other stuff. And I thought, I don't think so. This has to be written, you know, as if I were writing you a letter. This is what happened to me. I was in Kathmandu, and I was walking down the street, these labyrinthian streets with, you know, no plumbing, no electricity. There were mud, you know, buildings, like adobe buildings like there are in the Pueblos of New Mexico and Arizona. And the smells and the sacred cows and the everything that went on. I would take you on that journey with me. But I would also have a teaching in that journey. And made it so not only, I think, interesting to my readers, but so interesting to me to try and take this extraordinary experience, and a part of, so much of it was part of the what we call the unknowable. abstract, describe the abstract to people who pretty much think in a linear way. Because, the abstract is circular.
Yeah.
Everybody sits around a circle, everybody equidistant from the place of power, which is at the center. You need to talk to a for a minute because I'm losing my voice.
No worries. Well, okay, so
Take a big drink of water. And I know we each have a few questions for you. And, one of the things I was going to ask you about, since you are very tuned into this marvelous sisterhood, the Mother Earth energy, do you ever have your events, or have you ever met with the sisters at power points of the earth? And is that something that you acknowledge? I mean, that there are certain areas that geophysically, spiritually, perhaps there's even a grid. I mean, it's certainly speculated, since there are powerful pyramids all over the world, that they at one time function together in some type of energy system in some way. We also now have evidence that the Egyptians themselves traveled farther and more deeply than anyone has ever imagined. They went to Australia, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, the Old Kingdom, to meet with the Aborigines of Australia for spiritual enlightenment. There are hieroglyphs. They call them Proto-Egyptian, but there are hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Old Kingdom, in Australia, and in the Kimberley Mountains. Very, very well. You can look that up online. Egyptian hieroglyphs in Australia, and you'll see a lot of pictures. There were two young pharaohs who journeyed to Australia to meet with the Aborigines. One of them was killed by a snake bite. And is even interred somewhere in that area. And so we have had all these.
What part of Australia?
I believe that we're talking about the Kimberley Mountains. So I think that's where the hieroglyphs are located. But the point being that that knowledge has been shared in our deep history. Egyptian mummies are full of cocaine and tobacco, things that only exist in North and South America. So we have had tremendous interactions with other cultures in our deep history through our shared desire for spiritual illumination. And I kind of feel, in a way, like even through the internet, this is a new dawning of the sharing of spirituality among cultures, global cultures.
Absolutely. I think that's so true. But I think there's something weird occurring that is bringing people into so much judgment, into a kind of ignorance where they're told something and they just repeat it. They don't check on it. Where did this come from? Why is this person saying this? Where are they from? And of course that takes time and huge effort. But I think it's such an important thing to do right now in particular. That's why you do what you do, both of you, and why I did this Oracle deck instead of writing a book. It's about accessing the wisdom you already have, inside. We all do. But it's very hard to get to that. It's that place that is in between the words, in between the notes. It's that gap. That it's a place of stillness that is, that long. And if you can access that, it makes a huge difference in your life.
Can you tell us what you think, Lynn, of the fact that one of the decks has gone online? It's very inexpensive to access this program that you've created. Will people miss the tangible look and feel of the cards if they use the ones online?
Oh, golly, yes. Oh, absolutely. And both decks are done differently. This new one has a little heavier feeling to it. and it is so tactile. You know, it
Right.
takes you right into a very smooth, special place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like when you touch velvet or satin. You know, and they did just the whole thing. It's inside, it's gold, and they did such a beautiful job. If you can see with just the back of the
Presentation,
Oh,
stunning. It's stunning
beautiful.
presentation.
Beautiful.
beautiful. Gosh, they did a good job.
They
And then
did.
there's a book, of course, that goes with it.
Right.
And isn't that a neat painting?
Oh,
It's called New Hope, and it's a warrior holding the white baby buffalo
oh,
in his
beautiful.
arm.
It's a
Isn't
strong
it?
message, powerful message.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Anyway, I'm so thrilled with it. I'm
Well,
so glad to share it with you.
Thank you.
thank you,
appreciate
Lynn.
it.
You've done an amazing job there. Can you tell us a little bit about the artist who happened to do these amazing illustrations for your recent deck, the Oracle deck?
Um, his name is Robert Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Santa Fe part of the time, and I was walking up Canyon Road one evening, and there's galleries all along Canyon Road, and there was this gallery opening, and so we just walked in, and it was just one of these special galleries that had artists, several artists that they represented, Robert Taylor being one of them. And they all got along. It was like a family. So whenever they had an opening, we'd all go, and they'd have kind of a dinner set out, and we'd eat dinner with everybody and get to know the artists. So I met Robert there, and we got to know each other, and we became friends. And I was looking at his paintings, and I thought, you know what? These are tough paintings. You know, some of them are really strong.
Yeah.
I don't mean tough. I mean
Yeah.
strong in the sense of, hey,
Yeah.
you know, pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that's what we need in the world today, a quickening. I don't think I ever answered your question.
That's okay. we've done wonders in an hour.
But quickening means, you know, pick up the pace.
Yeah.
You know, open your mind,
Mm-hmm.
get with it. You know, the whole world's going by, and you're sitting there in some kind of definition of who you think you are, and maybe you aren't,
Mm-hmm. Right.
or maybe you are.
Indeed, indeed. Lynn, do you think that you may have had a past life or multiple past lives as a Native American person, which may be one of the reasons that you're so comfortable in this culture and express yourself so well within these shamanic traditions?
I must have. I have certainly experienced it. I wrote one book called Shikai, Woman of the Sacred Garden, which actually happened in Japan. And it's about the sacred garden and how, shamanically, what, you know, how do you place the stones? How do you make a garden out of a tiny little area that looks like a vast landscape and so forth? And it was a wonderful teaching book, but it was also a future life of mine.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I had a past life book called The Woman of Weird.
Mm-hmm.
And golly, Woman of Weird, W-Y-R-R-D.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an ancient tradition of shamanism in Europe. And grandmother was part of that. She came actually from the Cathars.
Okay.
Oh,
And the Cathars, as you know, were pretty much wiped out.
they were obliterated.
Obliterated, yes. And they held some extraordinary wisdom, which was part of the things that I work with, these ideas and thoughts. And so they hid those with the women. And some of the women did survive, and they passed this down from daughter to grandmother to mother, etc. And also wrote it out in scrolls and put them in clay pots in certain places. Yeah, sacred
So
rondos.
the Cathars, if I remember my history correctly, are in fact the direct descendants of the Essenes. Is that not the case? The first monotheistic people speculated that Jesus Christ was an Essene, or at least many of his family members were, and they became the Cathars.
The Cathars are really before that. Well, yes, maybe. I don't know that history, actually. The history I know of is more ancient, and Montpellier and the ruins. I'm losing my voice. I'm so sorry. You know, the ruins of Montpellier, which is on a mountain. And the Cathars, it's so interesting what you just said. Maybe the Essenes. It's a female culture.
Yes. Yes.
And they followed the female line.
Yes.
And they were peaceful. They were just brilliant.
Yes.
And, you know, they carried and held much of something like maybe the Holy Grail, or what is similar to the Holy Grail.
Well, let's give your voice a little rest here then, because we're coming up to the hour point, and maybe you can start to wrap us up. If you want to tell us about the Hawaii retreat or anything else you would like to tell us, that's great. We've got a couple of minutes left.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes. I'm having that fabulous Hawaii event, and it is December 1st through the 4th. We have the most incredible pricing on it. I'm practically giving it away because I want you to come. It's a 5-star hotel.
Wow.
And you can stay with us for about $50 a night.
Wow.
Whoa, that's inexpensive.
And I'm making it very inexpensive, and I want you to come so that you can experience the beauty. We forget about beauty in our lives. We don't know really. We're not being taught how to look at and or listen to beauty.
No.
You know, and this particular hotel is so sacred, and King Kamehameha built his sacred fish ponds right off of this hotel, and which are still in use, and they raise the big sea turtles. And have kept them from extinction. And every year on the 4th of July, Independence Day, they release some of the new turtles, the ones that they feel can live in the wild. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. And the volcanoes are all around you, and the trade winds, and
thank you.
Heaven.
Thank you for fleshing it out for us.
Well, everybody has to join you. And of course, as you know, the Hawaiian people and the Polynesian people are the direct descendants of the Lemurians. So their most ancient culture is, when you really get into the I'm not even going to call it mythology, the deep history of the Polynesian people, it's quite fascinating, and it is a PowerPoint. I believe you will be in one of Mother Earth's PowerPoints, delivering essential information.
It's really true. And you had asked me earlier. Yes, we do travel, and I take people to. We just got back from Peru, and the year before we went to Ireland, and then England, and Stonehenge, Egypt. I totally love Egypt, and felt so much there. And it'd be fun for us to just talk about that.
Oh, yes. It was interesting that came up. So, lynnandrews.com. Is there anything else you want to tell our viewers?
Well, I would love to tell you about my school. My mystery school is enrolling, and it is a way of dealing with abuse, for one thing. And dealing with abuse has to do with working yourself into new experiences, new memories, and letting go of memories that were so very long ago. You're no longer that child. And how do you do that? I really work with that aspect because I swear, most people come out of some aspect of abuse. So deal with it so you don't sabotage the end of your life.
Yes.
And so you learn to make commitments that are good for you, not bad for you.
Yes. That's brilliant, Lynn. And of course, you know, as a therapist these many years, I agree with you completely and totally on these figures. I have got to say that 80–90% of the people that I see, which is just a macrocosm, have experienced abuse. And of course, abuse crushes the soul. It crushes self-esteem, and people feel they don't deserve to be happiness. They carry guilt. So the important thing is just what you're doing to release these things. Some of them are in the body, but they can be released. And we have the power to do it, to move ahead in light and in love and in understanding. And
so we need more shows, is what you're saying.
We need more shows.
But you know, it helps to have someone who has walked down the trail before you.
Yes.
Who can kind of give you a guide. I mean, it's your wisdom, it's your whatever your God figures are. It's all yours. I just help you to see it and give you encouragement, and it's fun. You know, I think in the last analysis, if we're not having fun, we are certainly not doing something right.
Yes. Very
You know?
true. Brilliantly said, Lynn. And
I can't wait for the show to go up.
I can't wait. And on that wonderful note, Lynn Andrews, we just want to thank you so much for joining us here on Contact TV today. And I encourage everyone to visit your website as soon as possible. The books are there, the divination decks are there, the mystery school is there, the wonderful trip to Hawaii is there. You can find it all. And I'm sure, Lynn, if people can write to you through the website if they have personal concerns and ask you any questions that they might think of.
Absolutely. And I'm pulling a card for the week, every week for and then I'm going to be in Canada. I'm going to be where are you guys?
Toronto.
We're in Eastern Canada, Toronto.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to be in Vancouver.
Okay. West Coast, yes.
Yeah, West Coast. And I'll be there February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd or something like that.
Thank you for letting us know so our Canadian viewers can get on it. Indeed.
We'll put that up on our website as well. Lynn, thank you again. Bless your heart for everything you do. And we just wish you the most open roads and the deepest fulfillment. And there's nothing more wonderful than helping people to find their way and leading through experiences you are doing. So continue with your work. And we look forward to having you on the show anytime you want to come back. You just let us know.
Would love it. There's a whole bunch of things I'd love to talk about.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for what you do, because you give us a voice. You know, as a writer, it's fairly solitary, and you help us get response, which is so good for your heart, good for your soul.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Lynn. Take care and all the best to you. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye now. Thank you, Lynn. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Contact TV.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors: Lightwork Hypnosis, UFOria and the UFOria Chronicles, Earth Mystery News, Conspiracy Culture Books, MUFON Canada, Free Experiencers, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and Variety Store Productions.
For guest booking information, please email Wes Roberts at producer@contacttv.ca. And don't forget to join us on Facebook and Twitter.